Okay, good. So, my apologies for starting a little bit late. I am super duper tired, but the bottom line is I had to work today. As you know, today was actually a federal holiday for President Jimmy Carter's passing. And a lot of people didn't realize that they just mass called the law firm. So, I was actually trying to catch it up. And then, of course, without having back office staff, it just kept piling up. So, with that said, I want to go ahead and get right into this video. When the SSA begins the process of arresting a Social Security beneficiary, somebody who's receiving retirement benefits, Social Security disability insurance benefits, supplemental security income benefits, etc., could be widows, could be DAC benefits, whatever. They have to and are required to go ahead and carry something when they actually begin the process of this. And the whole idea behind this is that they claim it is for the protection of society, and they claim it is also for the protection of their officers. But the reality is that they do it because they want to be able to go ahead and use the evidence later against you, the recipient. So let's get right into it real quick. Here it is. I'm going to give you kind of the baseline. This is from OIG, Office of Inspector General, on behalf of the Social Security Administration. Body-worn cameras. This is effective date December 5th, 2024. The document number for, if you just want to look it up, is 007.065. Again, 007.065. Specifically, mandatory use of body-worn cameras, enforcement operations. So this is when they're required to have a camera on their body. And then in another video, we'll go through when they're not required to have a camera on their body, okay? In concert with the body-worn camera policy issued to the Department of Justice agencies by the Office of the Deputy Attorney General in June of 2021, so basically they updated this in 2021, and in accordance with the requirements set forth in the Executive Order on Advancing Effective Accountable Policing and Criminal Justice Practices to Enhance Public Trust and Public Safety, which is EO 14074, because, let's just be honest. People don't really trust the police anymore. They just, on the Democrat side, they don't trust the police. On the Republican side, they don't trust the police. Trust in the blue is very, very low. OISAs, basically, which are your investigators on behalf of the SSA, your SSA police officers, will wear and activate BWC's, body-worn cameras, recording equipment for purposes of recording their actions during each of the following. So these are the things basically where, if they're doing this to you, they've got to have their camera on. Remember, you can use that footage towards your own benefit going forward. Okay. So they got to use a body-worn camera, got to be on, mandatory use. This was released in December of 2024. Here we go. They have to do it if there is, or each of the following. So if this happens, they've got to do it. A pre-planned attempts to serve an arrest warrant or other pre-planned arrests, including the apprehension of fugitives sought on state and local warrants. So, like if you're still collecting your parents' retirement check after they've passed, or you're clearly working 5 jobs and you've committed fraud against the SSA, that sort of situation. Number 2, execution of search or seizure warrants or orders to exclude searches that are not physical in nature. Once again, execution of search or seizure warrants or orders to exclude searches that are not physical in nature. Okay. Now we go to the next one. Here we go. During the pre-operation briefing, the team leader will discuss the planned use of BWCs and review the requirements of this section. Any planned deviation from OI's BWC's policy must be approved in writing by the AIGI or their designee. And now here's another one. When conducting enforcement operations with a partner law enforcement agency that will deploy body-worn cameras during the operation, OI personnel will comply with the OI BWC policy. So basically they're saying, if you're working with some other law enforcement agent, so if the SSA cops are working with some other cops or some other sheriffs or some of this or some of whatever, then basically, they have to wear their body cameras, okay? Prior to any said operations, the OI division SAC overseeing the operation will notify the AIGI through the appropriate deputy AIGI of any unresolved conflicts with any partner law enforcement agency regarding BWC deployment during the operation. So what they're saying is, during when conducting enforcement operations, which can mean a lot of things. It can mean making sure you do something. Can mean arresting you on the spot, stuff like that. They've got, and if they're working with some other group, they've got to go ahead and have their body camera on. And usually, just so you guys know, there's usually 2 body cameras per OIG, SSA, investigative police officer-y person, right? Somebody that's actually going to be checking into. I use those terms because a lot of these acronyms don't really mean anything to you guys, but they're basically policemen on behalf of the SSA. Okay, the enforcement operations mentioned here are any that are not part of a formal task force or task force operation. See paragraph H above. They include operations resulting from joint investigations, support to other OIGs through mutual assistance agreements, and other similar circumstances. So when they say other mutual OIGs, like the VA, Veteran Affairs Office, has an OIG. Like a bunch of these agencies have their own Office of Inspector General, and they often team up to go out and grab people that they think are committing fraud or similar fraud or problems like that. Number 5, if applicable, special care should be taken to resolve any issues related to undercover agents involved in enforcement operations. So this is kind of the gray area issue, because when somebody is undercover, they've got to be careful as to what they're recording, what they're saying, and how they're interacting with that person, because obviously they want to retain undercover status, and also they want that person to continue to be at their post going forward. So a little bit of gray wiggle room there. We can always go into that one a little bit later. In the event of a body-worn camera becomes inoperable, and actually one of the most famous Social Security OIG lawsuits against OIG, and their police officer that basically went into the house of the person, one of the cameras malfunctioned. That's one of the most famous lawsuits that happened. But in the event a BWC becomes inoperable during an enforcement operation, the SA or CDI law enforcement officer wearing the device may continue to participate in the operation. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. There's a lot of wiggle room there where they could just turn off their camera, and you wouldn't be wrong. The idea here is that you could potentially see abuse where if there's some way to, effectively stop the camera, or give the camera a glitch and it's no longer working, or a problem and it's no longer working, then the officer would be able to kind of do whatever they wanted to do if both cameras failed. But usually they'll have 2 cameras on them. But I can see where there's some gray room on, yes, if it fails, they can still continue to do what they're doing. They don't have to retreat, which makes sense. But then people who are being arrested are going to be like, hey, wait a minute, this ain't such a good deal. Okay. Next one, internal authority. SAs need not seek distinct supervisory authority to use BWCs, body-worn cameras, in these cited enforcement operations. Okay, so just to be clear, when you go through this, when they come to check on you, when they come to arrest you, when they come to serve you, things like that, they're usually going to have a body-worn camera on their body. They're usually going to have 2 of them. That way, if one goes down, they're good to go. Now, keeping in mind, this document goes through a lot of information about the policy that they've set up to basically investigate a lot of you. And a lot of you kind of live in, and it's not as bad as it used to be. I remember when I started making videos about CDI units, people were frustrated and angry with me. How dare you create all this fear? How dare you say this? How dare you say that? Now, those are people living in the woods of Tennessee, in the mountains of Tennessee, that kind of area. They lived in a place where, it's like everybody in the community knows when somebody stands out, But for somebody like me, who literally almost every day gets a call or an email from somebody seeking one of those private hours to go over a situation that involves this stuff, to me, it happens all the time. Like, I'm talking about this stuff all the time. I'm interacting with it all the time. So to me, it's very commonplace. Now, with that said, I want you to understand they're looking for something that you're doing improperly. So if they're investigating you, it's usually with reason, right? There's usually some form, even if it's a small form of evidence, that's going to lead them to your door to see if you're truly as disabled as you claim you are, or if you're abusing a retirement check, etc. Let me read you a little bit of the policy here. This was all effective December 5th, 2024, so about a month ago. The policy outlined in this section pertains to the devices worn overtly on the outside of the SA's clothing or equipment. As noted in SAH 007.065L3, these devices may also be used off the body in certain circumstances. So remember, they don't always have to have them physically on themselves, right? They can sometimes, put them to get a different angle. The classic thing that I've heard is that they put them in the back of the house so that when you run out, boop, they got you on that one. So, that one as well. Any off-body use of the PWC must be done in accordance with applicable law and policy, including SAH 008.070. We'll go through that because there's things that I've heard. I mean, that literally could be applied here. That I think some of these individuals that are arresting, Social Security recipients, I think some of those would definitely violate those. So we'll go through them that way. You're kind of forewarned and know how that law works. OI will provide body worn. That's Office of Inspector General usually. OI will OI will provide body worn camera BWCs, body worn camera systems to SAs. The people that are actually arresting you, investigating you, serving you, etc., to provide, 1, an additional layer of safety for the SSA, 2, build trust in the communities OI serves by adding transparency and accountability in law enforcement operations, and 3, record interviews, obtain statements, or otherwise secure evidence in connection with an investigation. So just to be clear, they're using it for everybody's so-called benefits. So look, so here's the deal. When it comes to this stuff, it's always for the government's benefit because they're trying to collect evidence. It's very rare that one of their officers will pull something and do something wrong that you'll be able to use against them because they know they're being recorded just as they're recording you. So they're going to be on their best behavior. So only OI, Office of Investigation, and SAs and law enforcement agents or officers assigned to cooperative disability investigations, CDI units are the task forces set up to investigate you guys, may use body-worn cameras under OI authority. Okay. The Office of Inspection SAs will use only those BWCs that have been sourced and provided by OI headquarters. Okay. These BWCs possess feature and functionality specific to this policy. Other devices procured by OI field offices may not be used under the authority of this section. So the SSA wants to make sure that they're specifically using the gear that they give them. That way there's no oddities or breaches and things like that. Real quick, a super thanks to Mike O. I super appreciate it. $2 donation. That's absolutely amazing. Also, Royalty72 gets the blue ribbon. She was the first one to go ahead and be on the chat, which is awesome. Now, here's the next thing real quick. OI's BWC, the body-worn camera program, is managed by the BWC program manager because, it's a ton of body-worn cameras. You got to have a whole division just looking over that stuff. The BWC program manager is responsible for, among other things, ensuring that OISAs have the necessary hardware and training to implement this policy, developing and updating BWC training material, advising the policy and compliance team regarding updates to this policy, acting as OI's point of contact with BWC vendor, the body-worn camera vendor, and serving, when requested, is an advisory role to OIG's executive team when questions arise about the redaction and release of BW's footage. So what they're saying is they have a team of people who upkeep the cameras and can advise OIG as to what's going on when they erase footage or they redact something from the footage or they black something out in the footage or they go ahead and just, blur something. So, they have this team there that represents their ability to modify, alter, etc., potential footage received. So very, very important. That's the group that a little bit gray worm. They can do some funny work there. Okay. Just be aware of that. Royalty72. Thank you for the $2 donation. That's awesome. She is the blue ribbon winner for this video. She's been with us a super long time. You'll see that she's a subscriber and a member as well. She's got the really cool icon there. Gary Katowski's been with us for a long time, which is absolutely cool. Okay. Next thing is G, before the carriage and deployment of a BWC body worn camera, personnel must be trained in the device's use pursuant to an OI-approved training course, and the policies outlined in this section, as well as privacy and civil liberty laws. And that's what's important here, because remember, a lot of people have constitutional privacy laws that protect them, to be able to live a happy life in privacy, away from law enforcement constantly having an into your existence. Prior to using the device for the first time, SAs will ensure that the training is properly accounted for in OIG's training database. In addition to the initial required training, SAs must also complete an annual familiarization course developed by the BWC program manager. This training will be completed in conjunction with officer response tactics or firearms training. If an SA is unable to complete the required training, they will seek alternate training from the BWC program manager through their supervisor. SAs may also receive refresher BWC training during in-service training. So basically, and I mean, I don't imagine these cameras are hard to work. You know what I mean? There's a start button, there's a stop button, there's probably a high definition photo button, there's probably record, extra frames button, slow-mo button. I don't know. I just can't imagine that there's much to these cameras. I can't imagine that there's, you know what I mean, that when it comes down to it at the end of the day, they're hard to operate. Number 2, CDI law enforcement, right? Continuing, whatchamacallit, no, these are, sorry, it's late. CDI law enforcement. And here's the thing. There's a giant black schmutz on my paper. That's kind of screwing me up. That's what's going on. So anyway, CDI law enforcement. I don't know why I keep saying continuing disability. It's not that. It's the law enforcement group, the CDI unit that reviews you. All right. CDI law enforcement agents, and I can't read it, will receive training on their issued devices in accordance with the employing agency's policies and are not required to participate in OI's approved BWC initial or recurring training courses. They are, however, before using their body-worn camera, I can't read then. Okay, their BWCs and CDI investigations required to review their policy and acknowledge understanding of it. So, in writing to the division, special agent in charge through their chain of command. So basically, if they have to go through some other training course, they've got to certify it through the special agent in charge. Bottom line is, these individuals have to get trained 7 days to Sunday to go ahead and make sure that they've got this thing in working order. CDI law enforcement agents and officers making use of a CDI provided BWC, body-worn camera, will comply with BWC training requirements established for OISAs. Here's kind of the bottom line with this thing, okay? They have, all right, so let me get this last little part out, and then I'll give you my take on this whole situation. SAs, these are the people that investigate you when you're receiving Social Security benefits, participating as officers of a federal task force, like the United States Marshals Service or the FBI-sponsored task forces, will, in the event there are BWC policy conflicts, follow the BWC policy of the task force sponsor while engaged in an official task force operation. In these instances, these SAs, special agents, need not acquire authority from the Assistant Inspector General for Investigation or their designee to deviate from OI's BWC policy. So what they're saying is, if you're coming from an established group, United States Marshals, FBI, stuff like that, follow those groups. You don't have to get your okay from basically this OI BWC policy. Okay. The phrase SA, special agents, participation as officers of federal task forces strictly and only identifies those agents whose task force involvement is agreed upon in a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, entered into by appropriate agency leadership officials. It does not include working with investigative relationships or other task force engagement not sanctioned by a properly executed MOU. So basically, this has to be a sanctioned task force situation for them to be able to not use the SSA's rules for the body-worn camera. So that's the thing. That's exactly the thing I wanted to go into, is that they usually have 2 cameras. They're on their body. They're high definition. And the weird thing is, sometimes they go ahead and break. They don't work. But, they're collecting data. And one of the things you have to know about these officers is that they are trained when they walk into an area to assess the area. But they're assessing it not just only to look around and see what could potentially be a problem, but they are moving their body as well. So you'll notice that when you deal with police officers, they'll do that like this kind of stuff. They'll move their body this way. They'll move their body that way. They're allowing their cameras on their body to go ahead and capture the surroundings, because when they write the report, they can go to the time ticker on that actual footage and say, okay, that's when I saw that their wheelchair wasn't being used because it had a bunch of books on it and was dusty. Or that's when they can say, okay, and that's when I turned to my left and saw the person easily walk down the steps into the back porch area of their home. So that's what they're doing. They're moving their body, not just because if they just do this, they're not going to be moving the camera unless the camera is on their head, in their glasses, etc., which is usually not. it's usually on their body. All right. So just things to keep in mind as somebody receiving Social Security benefits, that when they go to investigate you, when they go to head and do these functions, or they're arresting you, that's also potential as well. They're going to be using essentially these body worn cameras in that fashion. Okay. And then we'll do the video where they don't actually have to go ahead and wear them, where they're optional in the future. Now, I'm keeping this video really short because I have to go ahead and get to the live video where people call in and ask questions. I am super tired, but we're going to go ahead and get through it. It's only about 30 minutes, then I'm going to go to bed. Please remember to like and subscribe. Also become a member if you want. One of the things I love is if you go to Google and type in Disability Resolution Law Firm, again, Disability Resolution Florida, and throw up some reviews up there. I always super appreciate that. Other thing is Mondays and Thursdays I go live, although it's usually super late because I work all day as a disability attorney. I take a shower, I throw this shirt on or some shirt or whatever, and then I do these videos to kind of update you on the status where things are at. I will catch you all a little bit later. You have a wonderful night. I will see you at the next video in about 5 to 10 minutes. And that's the video where I go live. You can ask questions. All right. I'll catch you at that one soon. And please remember, if you want a private session, it's that mini contract below where you get a full hour. Just go ahead and check out the bio area below. We do have a new one coming out that's a mini contract to update that. And basically what it is it includes me writing stuff for an hour versus essentially me going ahead and just talking you through what the timeline of what your action should be. I'll catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful night, and we will go from there. Attorney Walter Hnot of Disability Resolution, and I'll see you in about 5 to 10 minutes at the next video. Chat section will have the link. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.